Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today and welcome to our session. It's called Leading Through Disruption and How People-Centered Transformation Builds Stronger Cultures. I've been so looking forward to this one, to this conversation. I love the topic. I'm thrilled to be joined by my two guests today, which we'll introduce shortly. One of the things when I think about this topic is, thinking about today's business environment. Change is a constant, and so's disruption, and disruptions come to be expected. So really excited about this. My name is Tim Morton. I'm one of the founders of Prompt AI, and I'm just thrilled to be with you to guide you through this important conversation. And for those joining us live today, thank you. We'll have an opportunity for you to put questions in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll allow time at the end to answer those questions. We're also recording the session today, and we'll share it with you following the discussion, along with a blog post. So I'm so honored and pleased to introduce our guest speakers for today, Christy McLeod and Margaret Baker. Just two incredible leaders that I've had the great pleasure of working and collaborating with, and seeing them in action over the last several years. And I know both of them understand what it takes to lead through organizational culture change and various disruptions. And they bring tremendous expertise around business operations, HR, culture change, and change leadership. With that, over to you, Margaret, first, and then to Christy for an introduction.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Tim. Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Baker, as Tim mentioned. I'm currently the HR Manager, People and Operations and Strategy at Mozilla Thunderbird. HR wasn't my original path. I actually was a big political science nerd in university and thought I wanted to get into government and policy. And I actually ended up in HR by complete accident, just temporarily covering a vacancy, and I ended up loving it. From there, I ended up upskilling, getting certified, and eventually getting my CHRL, my Certified Human Resources Leadership designation, just a few years ago. I've been doing HR for about over a decade. And from the start, I always promised myself that I'd lead with humanity. It was my unique niche, my approach, and that I like to think was long before it was trendy for people to say people first. So I'd like to think I was at the cusp of that. That value still really anchors my approach to my work today, and really, again, colors how I see HR and managing relationships in my role. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. So I'm going to go. I'm Christy McLeod. I have over 16 years of experience in managing people from all different roles, different levels of tenure, titles, many different walks of life. So quite a bit of experience working with people. My background is in data and operational management. I'm currently a manager of professional services at Maximus Canada, where I manage a team of 16 people. And they work together to implement and customize government medical claims processing. So that's what I'm doing now. I actually started my career with a stats degree, and I got my first job working in data management, but it became very clear to me very quickly that I loved managing people. And I was always looking for ways of trying to improve the business and figure out how we could run more efficiently. So operations just felt like the right fit, the position that I could combine my love of managing and process and efficiency, problem solving. I've made a lot of mistakes along my way, for sure. I'm the type of person that I just love jumping into new problems and just trying to figure it out. So you're going to make mistakes. I hope that I've learned. I feel like I've learned a lot along the way. So hopefully some of that will come through today, and I'll be able to share some of what I've learned so far in my career with you, and hopefully you'll find it helpful.
Oh, thank you both. And it is amazing how we have that idea of where we're going to be and how the career is going to go, and then well, life happens, disruption happens, our passions come out, and I think that's a good part of this session today. And before jumping into the conversation and getting into some questions, I thought it's worth even talking about, when we think about leading through disruption, maybe we talk a little bit about what we mean by a disruption, and really that's anything that challenges the status quo for an office or for day-to-day operations. And we know as leaders that we can have this intention that hey, this is how my day's going to flow, but we know that disruptions are going to happen, and some are really big and some are smaller, but they really do need our attention. Like a big one could be, hey, there's an M&A, we've been acquired by another company, or a digital transformation. We all know that COVID was a huge disruption, or even trying to figure out and transition between hybrid, remote work. One disruption could be a turn in the economy, or regulatory changes, or one thing that's so present right now, tariffs. Other ones could be, hey, there's a new competitor on the market, or we're experiencing employee turnover, or we want to put in a wellness program, or we want to refresh our brand. The list goes on and on. But when we think about change and disruption, it's ever present, and some we're able to roll with more effectively because we've had lots of experience. We've gone through it several times. But with others, it really does it really does take a lot more effort. And then when we think about this success through disruption, we know success hinges on the human experience, and leading through this disruption with this people-centered approach. And I think Margaret, you called it so well, and that leading through humanity, which is so great. So just to get started, and first to Christy and then to Margaret. What does people-centered transformation mean to you?
Yeah, so for people-centered transformation, for me, it means really looking at any transformation and understanding the impact it's going to have on your people and bringing them along for the ride. So what does that mean? It means like including them along the way, providing the why, talking about what is the transformation? Why is it happening? Why are you addressing it the way you're addressing it? Sharing updates along the way, getting input from the team. You hire smart people for a reason, getting their ideas. Maybe they have ways of addressing it. Listening. That's a really big one that sometimes I think we forget. Sometimes your people just want to feel heard. And want to be able to say how hard things are, or this transformation's tough, and they just want to hear it. They just need to get off their chest. That's okay. Showing empathy. I know the word empathy is such a buzzword lately. You're going to hear us saying it today because it really is an important word. It is an important thing to lead with, especially through people-centered transformation. And then really making sure you're providing training to people when needed, if there's any changes coming in, and really setting clear expectations of your people when you're going through any major change. So those are kind of the key points for me when it comes to transformation. I think we'll dive into some of this stuff a bit more as we go through. Margaret, anything to add?
I think you nailed it. You said it so beautifully, agreeing with everything you said. This one kind of felt like an obvious one, like doesn't everybody just use this approach? So if you're not already factoring the emotional and human impact into every decision you make, you're kind of working in outdated, archaic times, in my opinion. So just to build off Christy's sentiment further, if you're not asking, how will this be perceived and or received by your people before making any big decision or change in your organization, you are operating with an outdated mindset. It would be very tone deaf in today's world to not consider the human impact. Your people are your biggest asset, your biggest line item in the organization, and your biggest investment. And it's in your biggest interest to make sure that every decision you make will end up on the right side of that investment. So people really just need to be at the forefront of every decision you make.
Yeah, and it's amazing the number of times they're not, which we see across industries and sectors. You know, I've heard from leaders so often, oh well, this is a good change, and people are just gonna like it, and you know, if they don't, that's their problem. And we know that doesn't work. You know, when you think about leaders have that opportunity to um, digest and figure out what this means to them, and it's so important that, you know, we give others that opportunity as well. And I think, you know, even, you know, Christy, you said the why, and you said the importance of listening, and I think, Margaret, it's, you know, you were saying that if they're not, it's really outdated. It's just amazing that so many folks don't realize and don't think about this. They just, it's full speed ahead without without thinking about that impact and bringing people along the journey, which is so important. So
Yeah. Can I add one more point there? Something I
please.
want to add, because you mentioned Tim saying that, you know, people will say, well, if they don't like it, too bad. And to be clear, in people-centered transformation, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to be happy all the time and agree with everything you're going to do. So there is, you know, going into this understanding that that's not necessarily the goal, but you can always try to minimize the impact and try to help people understand why things are happening, and they're going to be more likely to jump on board. But yeah, you're always going to have people that are going to be frustrated with change. You're always going to have people that don't agree with the way you're doing things. That's part of business. It's part of life. But I think with these approaches, you can really try to minimize that as much as possible and keep a positive culture.
Yeah, and I think that you know, even sharing with as part of the why, this is going to happen, and and people will resist. But I think even if you give them that opportunity to understand the why, and even, you know, share what their concerns or fears are, and they feel heard, you're really going along along the path of really including them, and sometimes they become the biggest advocate along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I just starting with you for this one, Margaret. What one leadership trait do you think matters most during disruptive change?
I'm going to cheat a little. I have two that I've identified, and Christy helped remind me. There's an organization whose values actually beautifully encompass the two that I think of, and it's provides calmness and clarity. And what I love about this is, in times of disruptive change, a leader who can make clear decisions without panicking. Sounds so simple, yet so important, really sets the tone for the whole team and the organization. Leaders who can quickly make decisions. I love to follow the 80-20 rule. You can always course correct along the way, but getting decisions out the door and really being proactive and quick is really important in times of disruption. Doing all that while you're avoiding, again, going back to not stoking fear, not stoking confusion, again, very clear expectations of what's necessary and what needed. So that really helps set the tone, keep the team grounded, and move forward with confidence. Internally, you may be scared, but you can't show that. You're the leader. You really need to have to encompass those values and those characteristics, because that is ultimately, you know, people are looking up to you, and it's really important to embody.
Yeah, completely agree with that, Margaret. It's always been one of my favorite values I've seen as well. So I try to live that every day, and don't always succeed, but all we can do is do our best, right? For mine, I picked similar. I kind of combined two into one, but clear communication with consideration. So this is how I describe the trait that I think is important. So it's similar to Margaret's point in making decisions, but then you got to follow through with the clear communication. So what are the expectations, communicating it, again, the why behind why you're making these decisions, and listening to your people's input. So those would be really really important. And then approaching every communication, taking into consideration the impact on the person. So who are you sending it to? It may be the whole company, it may be an individual team. What's the impact of what you're sharing with them on those people, and trying to address it up front, and acknowledging those situations. So finding people that can really communicate well and really be mindful of the people around them is, I think, a really key piece of a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And I love, uh, I so love the don't panic and figure what you're communicating, because part of it too, uh, along the way, we want people to know that we're working through it and there's a plan. And I was just reminded, I had a visual pop in my head years ago. We're working on a client site, and something happened. One leader ran out of a meeting and he's running around with scissors in his hand through through the office. And I think part of it, what we're trying to do is having people continue to, oh, it's business as usual, please continue. But this person was having a, they were having a meltdown, and the way they chose to move forward with this, we really had to try and support to get people back on. But it's just that, oh, okay, there's going to be time, and we can have our peers, right, that we can bounce ideas off and work through, and how do we move forward. But it's just it's kind of like sending that email out to the whole company, and then regretting doing it. What did I like?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're in that initial state of shock, as opposed to, okay, let's plan out a course of action for how we're going to lead. So
Oh yeah, I'm huge on corporate communications, and to this day, the more important the communication, the more eyes need to be on it before it gets sent out. Did I consider
Yeah.
everything? Is there anything that can be misconstrued in something that I perceive not to be nefarious or ill-worded? And there's just so many things, and it's so great to have that gut check from your colleagues who you're working closely with on an initiative. And there's nothing worse than sending out a shocker email or something that you completely missed an entire important component that you then have to follow up to your own email and apologize and retract. So corporate communication, super important. Be very mindful and careful and thoughtful of, again, your audience, as Christy said. Who are you sending this to? How do you want to sound? What's the tone you're trying to set?
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a question from the audience. So
Okay.
I'd love to just get your thoughts on it, and I'll just read this. It was, based on your experience, which type of people, and then it was bracket profiles or characteristics, are most resistant to disruptions or changes, and how do you perceive and assess as a leader this resistance, since there's several ways to demonstrate resistance?
Whew.
It's a great
That's a good
question.
question.
Throw us a hard one right away, guys. Tough. I mean, in my experience, I actually haven't found that many people actually are resistant to change. I mean, I do feel like there's degrees of which people are able to embrace it. I think everybody understands that change is happening. Again, it comes down to the degree of which you have to like kind of hold hands or explain a bit to people to bring them along for the ride. I'm trying to think of like more specifics that could be helpful. I don't
Yeah,
know if you want to jump in here.
in terms of profile, I can't say I found a pattern of a specific
Yeah.
type of person or employee. You'd actually be surprised at when you roll out something, again, you perceive to be a pretty simple change, and who your biggest critics are. And sometimes people who I thought were going to be my allies in a situation, and it completely catches me off guard. So I've been surprised all around. I think the biggest piece that I could have done and am continuing to learn is just around proactiveness of communications. And you'll hear us say this a lot during this chat. You can't under communicate. You think you've done enough, do more. Because some people just haven't gotten to that email and read it yet. Others have read it and it didn't digest. So they, maybe need a couple more reminders, and others will digest it on their own time. So it's you just have to be nimble and agile as the person who is creating change, and be open that there's going to be some smoothing over at times necessary.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the
Go ahead,
go
Tim.
ahead, please, Christy.
No, I was just going to add, like, I'm trying to think of a situation. I mean, resiliency and openness to change, I think, are two different traits. I think, openness to change, I agree, most people are open to it. The resiliency piece is a bit different. I'm sure there's some good questions that you could ask during hiring that would help kind of dig into some of their like ability to manage resiliency, even asking people what resiliency means to them, and then giving an example of how they've brought that to life in an interview could be really helpful to kind of dig in on how they approach those things and understanding it. So yeah, I think that could be helpful during interviews. But yeah, I honestly believe if you have really good managers and really good people leaders, you can help anybody be open to change and be resilient. It's something that you can coach. And again, I have some points about that later, which I'll talk about as we get there. But yeah, so I think everybody's coachable is really what it comes down to.
I like that interview question. I'm going to add that to my list, Christy. What does resiliency mean to you? I can't say I asked that right now.
and then one of the things I always think about too is expect resistance. If we, it can appear in different ways. People doing work to rule, or somebody who's on board, a leader even on board in a meeting, and suddenly when they're out at the water cooler or out for a drink after, or a social thing, they're not. And their actions. So it's really interesting too how it does show up, but it can be that opportunity, right? Because once we start to see this resistance, it really does make a difference, right? In how we can get to it head on. So just thinking about the next question, I want to start with you on this one, Christy, if I can. So from your experience, what's the one thing leaders often get wrong when navigating culture change during disruption? And again, that could be a myriad of different types of disruption, like hey, we're going to focus in a different direction, or a new product offering, or there's a reorg, or we've got new leaders joining, new ways of working, new process, whatever it is. So what's that one first thing that leaders, often get wrong?
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys are going to feel like we're beating a dead horse with this a little bit, but we're going to talk about communication again. But I'm going to dive in a little bit more on this one and give a bit more examples of what I mean when I say lack of transparency or improper communication channels. So I think, we hear, we're in fast-paced environments, things are moving all the time. Leaders can really think, we don't have time to communicate, we just got to get this done, and not understand how big of an impact that can really have if you don't take a minute to pause, communicate what's happening, and then go forward. Or do it at the same time, but like taking the time to make sure that communication goes out, it can really create a much more positive culture and make the transformation or whatever changes are coming be more successful to your business. So I don't think, again, you can never communicate too much. Taking the moment to say, guys, this is what's happening. COVID hit. We know this is what we know. This is what we don't know. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're still trying to figure out. We'll be in touch again soon. Like taking those moments to pause and figure out how to communicate those things. And it can be as big as COVID hit to, we are rolling out a new project management software. We've made the decision to do this. Here's what you can expect. Here's what's coming. So just setting the why and taking that moment to pause and communicating beyond the immediate group frequently. So I find what can also happen is, if you've got, I'm going to use the example of rolling out a new project management software. It's an easy one. I feel like a lot of people have been in these types of situations. So, you've got your IT person, your tech person, you've got one or two people in project management helping, you've got your crew that's really responsible for rolling out that software. And what tends to happen is those people are communicated with daily, hourly, regularly, because you guys are trying to get the work done. There's all these other people that are going to be directly impacted by that rollout, the other project managers, the people that receive reports from the project management software, all of these things. And if you're not communicating with them, and they're going to be frustrated, like, what does this mean for me? When is this happening? Oh, you're rolling this out, but this impacts me. I have thoughts on how we can improve this. Oh, I wish I knew you were rolling out Smartsheet or ServiceNow or whatever these softwares are. There's tons of them out there. I've done this at my last company. I could have helped. Like, maybe if I knew you were doing this, I could have given you some like ideas on how to avoid some risks that could come up.
Mhm.
So by really like making sure you're touching base with the greater team semi-frequently, and you got to judge that based on the size of the project, the urgencies, the risks, all that kind of stuff. But you do need to be checking in with the greater team, you know, semi-frequently to make sure that they're updated on the status, what's happening, how's it impacting them, what do we need from you. And through all of this, when we talk about improper channels, this is where it's really important for leaders to respect their managers. So it's taking the time to think, am I going to send out this communication and I'm going to tell, you know, the whole project management team or the whole other team that we need their time for a week, but I haven't told the manager this yet? Like, that's not okay. You're not giving your manager the respect to manage their team effectively. So making sure that you're taking the time to think through whatever's being sent out and that your managers are given the information they need to be able to answer the questions from their team when those information and communications come out, and being able to make sure they're able to preemptively plan for their team whatever the impact of the communication is going to be. So those are really important pieces around communication, just digging into a little more of the tactical pieces of like the things that we need to be thinking about around communication. And I've seen that fail before. I think leaders get it wrong all the time. And I think that it really does cause a lot of frustration. I have so many times I've had people come to me and be like, well, I had no idea this was happening. What does this mean for me? And I'm, as their manager, like, I don't know. I need to find information. And that doesn't look good on the company. So just make sure that you're taking the time to think those things through. So that's my thought on that one.
Excellent. Margaret?
Yeah, and if you cascade that messaging properly, your managers really are your biggest advocates, as you said earlier, Tim. You can really rely on them to help smooth over the message, communicate it, because you can't be everywhere all at once sometimes. And there will be very nuanced questions that need answering, but you need to give those managers the tools and the information so that they can help bring down the temperature if there is concern around anything. After communication, I think the biggest miss is improper training and instruction and follow-up on said change. This can happen because it's perceived that the change is intuitive and easy, and the assumption, well, that everyone can just log in, you know, into a new platform and figure it out. Other times, it's just about the availability of the training. I think you really need to be thoughtful beyond just one channel of training. If there's a live training, make sure there's a follow-up one, make sure there's a recording, make sure there's easy to guides for those people who, again, learn differently. Not everyone is at their best in a one-on-one or in a live training. So you really need to cover your bases and hit all the different ways people learn and absorb information. And again, then you do it often and repeated. And that is really your role as the change management instigator. You need to give ample avenues and opportunities to receive the change and adopt it and become comfortable with it. So creating really good onboarding guides, videos, resources, and considering those people also who maybe will miss it, whatever you're onboarding or launching, and giving them opportunity because, you know, they're out of office for a valid reason, be it PTO or other personal time. So we really just need to cover all our bases and make sure that you're super thorough, super detailed, and no one will ever say that it's too much information. In fact, if anything, they'll be receptive, grateful for your over communication and information, and then you'll get really, really good post-implementation feedback scores when you go and source that when you run a survey. So that's my thoughts on that.
And perfect. And even speaking of the survey, we had a great another great comment in the chat around finding opportunities for people who don't feel safe to speak up. So giving them those opportunities to share either their resistance, their concerns, getting them involved and engaged as well is so important. So just Margaret, I'd love to start with you on this one, and just thinking about your experiences and is there one mistake that you'd be open to sharing that you've made through a transformation? And if so, what did it teach you?
I thought about this one long and hard because I had to decide how vulnerable I was going to be today. I still make a lot of mistakes. It's part of learning and growing, and I am not ashamed by those. But I think one of my biggest tendencies to this day, and I have to catch myself, is I tend to be overzealous and overconfident with all my timelines. It's due to my natural optimistic nature, and I can sometimes not really anticipate the blockers that would maybe be ahead of me in any specific project, or anticipate any kind of other issues that could arise, even in situations that I've already been in before, where I've had the same experiences and had to deal with fires. So it's actually kind of funny and problematic. Maybe not so funny in the moment, but looking back reflectively, I can kind of giggle at it. Specifically, again, using software implementation as an example, I've implemented many different softwares, and I still hit a problem every time. And I'm still too optimistic every time and don't consider all those things. So that's just something I need to personally work on, is being more truthful and honest with my capacity, with what I can take on, with what I have to say no to and prioritize, and how I can effectively delegate the things that need to do and happen before something launches to the people I'm working with on the project. So that's something I'm super, super mindful of. And I continue to think about as I continue growing in my leadership capacity.
Great. And even as a leader, being able to actually acknowledge that you're human and you're going to make mistakes and grow and learn and is I believe a huge strength. So thank you. And Christy?
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. A big part of being a people first leader is being able to acknowledge that you're a person too, and that we're all making mistakes and making other people feel okay to make mistakes. It's really important and makes people feel very comfortable and safe, which is important. My mistakes, like I had to come up with one. I mean, I've made so many mistakes. It's all part of learning. I mentioned that already. I think what I want to talk about today is, for me, the biggest mistake I've made in my career as a people first leader is somebody who I really want to make everybody happy. And I think this is why I called this out at the beginning, Tim, about you're not going to be able to ever make everybody happy. It's not possible. And that's okay. I think that I would really internalize if not everybody was super on board and super happy with every change and everything we were doing. And it would really eat away at me because I wanted that. I wanted everybody to feel happy and great at work, and it's just not reality. So I think setting some real expectations that are like fair to yourself as a manager and leader of a company, that it's okay if not everybody agrees with the changes you're making and the way you're making them. You can only do your best to help them understand and help them feel heard. And hopefully, in the next time you make a change, that person will like what you're doing. Maybe somebody else won't. That's okay. And honestly, if you have someone who's consistently unhappy with the way you're running the business, there's a good chance it's maybe just not the right fit for them. And it doesn't always have to speak to that you're not a good leader or not a good manager or not a good operations decision maker. It can be just that some things you're just never going to make everybody happy. And that was a big learning for me, and something I still wrestle with today, because I really do care so much about the people that work for me, and I want them to really enjoy coming to work every day. So I work really hard at that, but it's something we all have to remember.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, even thinking about that, making everybody happy, because sometimes them not being happy, and it's a hard one as a leader, sometimes it's just not about us.
Yeah.
There's a myriad of things that can be happening in their existence, or in their even the other parts of the work culture or home or balance or anything like that, but it's a hard one, because we're really tasked with helping to develop and grow our people, and we really take it on. So and I think the whole happiness that builds into just thinking through and thinking about the 13 psychological safety factors. And if folks joining or watching aren't familiar, they're a set of workplace elements that have been identified by the National Standard of Canada Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. And they're really designed in practice to help create a safe, healthy, supportive work environment where employees can thrive both mentally and emotionally. So, Margaret, starting with you on this one, just thinking about that and thinking about how you've seen psychological safety and the impact that it can have on transformation success or even failure in real time.
Yeah, I mean, I love all the factors. They're all so good, and I'm always like constantly checking, like even just like, are we doing this? Are we doing that? But I think the two that really stick out for me the most, and being in tech, is reasonable workloads and clear leadership expectations. So I've got those two, and I'll kind of explain why. With the reasonable workload expectations, we all have deliverables. We have busy weeks. There's times projects release, and there's going to be natural ebbs and flows in how busy we are at work. And that's understandable to most professionals. So during crunch time, we all know we kind of get hands on deck and help a project to the end. But this is an exception to the rule. It should not be the day-to-day consistent expectation of your management team that you are working 60-hour work weeks above and beyond all the time. When this becomes the norm, it becomes unhealthy. You're going to burn out your team. Even the brightest, shiniest stars will burn out eventually. It is just not manageable. And anyone who says that they enjoy this level of work are either a little bit out of the norm, abnormal, a rarity. They're lying to themselves, or they just haven't hit that mark yet where it's not sustainable. So everybody gets there, and I've seen it. So I think having a manager who has clear expectations on what the deliverables and the projects are, and they help you manage your time to get those reasonable workloads done. And they can still be moonshot, and they can still be big, juicy, shiny corporate objectives that we push out. But it's about just having reasonable expectation of what people can actually deliver on. I think somewhere a long time ago, I read that, the average person only has the capacity to make like 21 decisions a day before they mentally get taxed out. And then what does that look like weekly? So you have to really, as a manager, be thinking how much is on this person's plate today? Should tomorrow be a little lighter? Do we remove some priorities off their plate? Do we talk to them proactively to know that they can ask for support? So just really being plugged in as a manager on what your employees are working on and helping them manage the workload is a big part of the clear leadership expectations. And together, when those two are in the right place and align, magic can truly happen. You can reach your corporate objectives. You can have a high functioning, performing team who loves to deliver and be impactful. People feel good being impactful. They want to deliver good work and objectives. It's a endorphin boost. We all love it. So I think when you have all those aligning right, it can be really, really amazing in the workplace.
Yeah, I agree with those two very strongly, and with Margaret, that those are two very key pieces. And then I'm just going to talk about like kind of a core aspect that I think is really important, and maybe we don't talk about as much, is respect and civility. It seems so obvious that this is something that we should be providing, but I have seen people come to the team that are not respectful, and it just crush the team and just really demotivate everybody to not want to do their best. And so we think, maybe one person is being rude to one other person in the room and think, okay, well, it's only impacting that one person. It's not. It's impacting everyone in the room. Everybody's going to feel that energy when somebody's coming in and being disrespectful. I just wrote a quick example. So like you have somebody come to a meeting and provide an idea. Maybe they're newer, more junior, so they're still learning, and maybe they've missed a key part of the project. You could show respect by saying something along the lines of, thanks for sharing your idea. With this other situation, this is why this isn't going to work, but I appreciate you coming to the table and keep coming with more ideas, right? Really continue to encourage that growth. Someone who's not being respectful is going to come in and say something like, well, obviously that's not going to work because of this, this, and this. So let's not waste our time with bad ideas, guys. Like, we need things that are going to work. That is such a different tone of a meeting, such a different tone of somebody feeling like they want to come to the table with ideas. And now maybe that idea wasn't going to work that time, but that person could have a real juicy idea 2 weeks later, and they're not going to bring it to the table because they're scared that you're going to push them down. And the energy it's building around them is not healthy either. So you really want to feel build that team up. And if you are noticing anybody in the room, you got to nip that in the bud immediately. So as leaders, it is our job to recognize those things happening, address the issue, and make sure that you're managing to those things. And if it's a consistent issue with someone, that person should not be at your company anymore. That it can become very toxic very quickly, and it can have major impact on your company. So that, to me, is the most important one to add.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's so true. And I just think about companies where we've seen where nobody's feels safe, and they can't understand, why does nobody ever ask a question in a town hall or in a team meeting? And it's because they don't feel safe, or they don't answer, they don't complete a survey honestly because they don't feel safe. And I think too, one of the things around culture and safety is even asking your people, how do they feel on Saturday as compared to Sunday? When they know that they wake up on Sunday and they've got to go into the office. Is it?
Sunday scaries. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and please for the audience, continue to add your questions into the chat. And Margaret, for you on the next one, are you able to share an example of where HR or people and culture truly led a transformation effort instead of being brought in later?
Yeah. We had some differences of opinion of interpretation of this question. So we discussed it at length, but I mean, the highlight I'm going to share, and I'm still proud of this, and I use it as an example all the time when I speak to one of my proudest HR moments, and that was back in 2019. It was actually when we first met you, Tim, and Prompta. And at the time, myself and Christy and a few other colleagues who were working on this initiative, and it was about bringing in a mental health strategy into the organization. And what I liked about this and why I'm so proud of it, it was a very proactive moment. We had this sense and appetite in the air of I think we're really lacking in this. It'd be really interesting to know more about this. People are starting to talk about it. What does it look like to bring it into the organization and have intelligent conversations with the right language, with the right empathy, with the right approach? And we knew in-house we just did not have the expertise. I would have been, about halfway through my HR career at this time, despite my feelings of my ability to really hone into the human experience. This is not an area I was comfortable in. And so we partnered with Prompta, brought in the experts, which is my other advice. If you don't know, bring in the experts. You don't have to make it up on your own and then roll out a bad change that really just is nonsensical. Invest in the change you're making, bring in the experts. And it was a really great opportunity and alignment across the organization. Leadership was aligned to the initiative. Everything just felt again like all the stars were in the right place and everything was falling into place. And we went forward with some in-house training, first at the manager level, getting their buy-in, and then cascading it down appropriately to all the other employees, so that the managers, in this case, again, helped and advocate the messaging, and we were all aligned on the language, and we knew what we were talking about. And then, of course, as we all know, several short months later, a huge pandemic hits us, and we were just that much more prepared than others in the same space. And it was one of those, like, I'm so grateful we did that moments. And it like gives me goosebumps thinking about it, because again, this is an instant where you have to trust your intuition and your gut as a people leader. Be like, what does my team need? And let's be proactive about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Christy, anything, or should I jump to the next question?
No, Margaret did a great job with that.
Okay.
I don't need to add anything.
Okay. All right, Christy, this one's for you then.
Yeah.
Because I know you've worked in that intersection of culture and operation. And how do you balance empathy? Because you mentioned empathy before, but how do you balance empathy with performance when teams are fatigued by constant change?
Yeah, so this is obviously a really tough thing for leaders to do, because there's a level of, we want to be empathetic, but at the same time, like we need to get this done. We need to get through this. We need to just adjust, and that's the reality of business. And so it's finding that balance. So I find, it may seem a bit repetitive, but setting those clear expectations and having a clear project plan, and tasks for people that they have a very clear understanding of what they need to do. So there feels like there's almost like a, if you're in the middle of a major transformation, there almost feels like there's an end date, or there's like something they're working towards, and they see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel to get through this, or that can be really helpful for people. The other thing I think is really important for leaders to keep in mind, don't be afraid to say that we know we're asking for a lot. We know it's been a lot. If they hear you say that, they will feel, okay, I'm not, like, for lack of a better word, crazy, or I'm not like, abnormal for feeling so overwhelmed through all of this. Like, no, we're asking a lot of you. And there's been a lot of change lately, and we understand it's hard, and we hear it. We want to do what we can to help minimize that for you. But at the same time, like, this is the reality, so we kind of need to push through. So having those conversations is, I think, really helpful. I know for me, like, just having someone say, like, I see you, helps a lot to get through some really tough times. So just having that kind of level of, like, openness and vulnerability with your team, and having those conversations. I think really making sure that you're rewarding their impact of the work that they're doing, and not rewarding long hours, making sure you're not creating this cycle of, we're going to reward you because you're working 12 hours a day. That's not what we're here to reward. We want to reward the outcomes. What are we really delivering on, and what are we proud of? And let's celebrate those things, and do our best to give breaks. So when people are feeling really overwhelmed, if there's ever an opportunity to say, just leave early today, you know what? We need to go on a team lunch. We need to take a break and have some fun. Like, really finding ways to find those moments to really bring some lightness to the work can be helpful too. I'm a big believer in fun and humor. I use humor a lot in my day-to-day of managing people. I try to make people laugh every day. I just, and it's stupid jokes. Like, throw a dad joke on a team chat. Like, it can go a long way to just make people feel a bit lighter and be like, okay, I got to laugh. Okay, now I can kind of push through. So these little things can go a long way to just kind of helping people push through these tough times. But again, the number one thing I can recommend is acknowledging it's hard, and have them feel seen. And that brings the empathy to the table for them. And I think that goes a long way with people.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That I mean, that's amazing advice, and all these things do add up, and they do count.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so important. So Margaret, for you, when it comes to fostering inclusive leadership, where do organizations typically get stuck, and how in your experience do you help them get unstuck?
Yeah. Going back to managers, the managers, like your middle line managers, is like my secret tool. Like, a strong organization will have an amazing lineup of managers. And when you trust their decision-making abilities, and you delegate appropriately to them, and you trust that they're your subject matter experts in said area they are working in, you should be able to step back, not micromanage, and again, let the magic happen. You are there to support them. You are there not to, again, micromanage down. It's not top-down leadership, but it's supportive leadership. You give them the information, the tools, the autonomy to make the decisions. And with that trust, they will come to you when they need help. Or if there is a mistake made, help them correct the mistake, and create such psychological safety that they will feel okay coming to you, being like, you know what, I made a mistake. And you're not there to chastise them. You're there to help problem solve it. Because again, at the end of the day, we're all managers, or we're all human. We're managers who make mistakes as well, as Christy and I divulged earlier. And we're just here all to hopefully get the same mission accomplished at the organization we work in. So really, really trusting your manager lineup is super, super important.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add one little piece to that, Margaret, because I think what's important too is when you're hiring your middle managers, that you're hiring for supportive leaderships. I think we do tend to really try to look for those people who are experts in whatever it is you're hiring them for, but they don't always have to be. I think that bringing in somebody that is smart and can learn quickly and is a really good people manager can make a big difference, even if they don't know what they're doing in that area. So I recommend putting more focus on that piece of it than being the subject matter expert when you're looking for those middle managers. So that can be an area where it can really help leadership get unstuck if they've got the right people in the middle manager roles.
Yeah, you can absolutely coach for the technical skills. It's much harder to coach for the soft skills. And not everybody wants to be a manager either. So when interviewing, inquire, what is their career trajectory? What do they want to accomplish? They may not want to be a manager ever, and you have to, and pushing a manager role on an individual who's not open to that experience is also has, in my experience, never just worked out that well. So again, getting the right people in the right role is really, really key here.
Yeah. And Christy, when it comes to senior leaders, in your experience, what's been most effective in turning senior leaders into champions of culture?
Yeah, so this is a great question and a tough one. So when Margaret and I were working together, we, when you're thinking about like HR related and you're trying to talk to very senior levels, and this is true in any organization, you really want to understand the goal of the leaders. So what are their goals? What are they trying to achieve? What is the company's overarching mission? And what role does culture play in achieving those is really important. So if you got to speak their language. A lot of senior execs, they care about money, the dollars, right? And it's not true always, but the dollars are obviously a big part of business. So anything you can do to show how having a healthy culture is going to improve your bottom line is really helpful. So any data or articles you can share around those types of things. And then again, just really understanding the goals and showing how you're going to be able to improve those goals. Another thing that's really important is you can engage them in understanding their 360 feedback. So 360 feedback is highly recommended. If you have leaders that want to do better, the more you can share feedback with them and coach them and help them learn how to become better leaders, that's, then they're going to feel like, oh, it's worth it for me to do this. And then setting clear expectations, values. So having values in your company, making sure it's clear, what is your expectation around culture? It's hard to engage your leaders if they don't even know what you're asking them to engage in, right? So having those values and setting them and making sure it's very clear to people what they mean, and then setting your rewards and recognition around it. So making sure that you're not just rewarding your managers or your senior leaders with revenue targets or things like that. You want to also think about how you can reward them around the values and what role they're playing in culture. So showing them why it's important and then actually recognizing them for it. Yeah.
Wow. We've just got 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna ask two more questions, get some final thoughts, but just for you, Margaret, data. How can you use data or how do you even use data in your work to surface invisible culture risks or opportunities through a transformation?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most obvious HR metric is obviously something like an employee engagement score, an ENPS, they call it, is the official metric. I call it an EES. It's just an easier abbreviation for me to remember. And you'll want to absolutely have one at your organization. The length and cadence of the questionnaire will vary. It's obviously a completely anonymous survey, and again, the size of your organization and other priorities dictates how often you can run it. So there's some really great questions you can ask there. There's a lot of universal questions too. When I set up my most recent one, I had my go-to questionnaire set. I worked with other colleagues in other spaces across other organizations just to kind of say, what do you guys ask? And, always just getting my finger on the pulse of what's important to know and why, and inquire about. So that's definitely the easy one. You can also substitute like pulse checks in between, which are also just quick hits, a little quicker feedback to understand what's really happening, but really just establishing a good baseline of data so that you can go back and compare. So I like to do this in like a simple spreadsheet and just have wave over wave and be able to compare where am I dropping, where am I increasing, what are some things I could do in order to bring up some of these metrics that are maybe sliding, why are they sliding? And you do a little detective work there, and then you build your objectives around some of those needs. Other ways to get data, more qualitative data, is having in-person feedback loops. And that means one-on-one with your manager team or your manager team with their reports, having whatever cadence works for their team and their needs, having an established feedback loop so that you could in real time ask, how's it going? How are you doing? What are you grappling with? Anything I can help you with? And again, with psychological safety in place, with the appropriate trust, if you do everything correctly, you should be able to get an honest answer of how people are feeling in real time. So just that simple human element of information collection is really, really important. And then there's other things you can look at. You can look at programs or benefits that are maybe being underutilized. An underutilized benefit to me is not a benefit at all. So understanding, why aren't people using this? Is it just no appetite for it? Are they too busy for it? So you can do some other investigative work in the seeing maybe not a utilization of a particular program you'd hoped or would have liked to have seen more use of. So those are just some HR metrics to look at.
Oh, thank you so much. And I know we're almost, if I could even, 30 seconds or so from each of you, if I could just get a closing thought, just one key thing that you'd love to leave the audience with from today. And either one of you feel free to go
ahead, Margaret. You're up first.
Yeah, sure. I'll start. I'll marry something I think a really important point. As we're talking about a human-centric approach to the work we do and leading with empathy and compassion, it's also really important as leaders to have boundaries and respectful boundaries to ourselves. You're not an licensed therapist or counselor or emotional dumping ground for everything and anything. So I think just having really, really good boundaries and being able to acknowledge when you need to listen and validate. And then there's going to be times when you need to listen and you need to advance. And this is when you bring in your people team and you get the support and help you need and the systems in place to help navigate more complex people challenges. On many occasions, I have not been looped in on things I should have been looped in, and I would have made that manager's life a lot easier had they just brought me in sooner. So I think that is kind of just some advice there, but definitely leading with humanity, leading humanely and with a good heart and good intentions and how you want to be treated goes a long way in business. So that's my closing sentiment.
Thanks, Margaret.
Yeah,
Christy?
And for me, I think to summarize, for me, I can't stress enough the importance of communication and just all of the layers of communication that we've talked about today, as far as, using the proper channels, the frequency, who you're communicating to, communicating with consideration of the people in mind that you're communicating with, and just really approaching your transformation with a lot of understanding for the people that are going through it with you is so important. And to Margaret's point, don't forget to set those boundaries for yourself, because like I said, you can't make everything perfect for everyone all the time. You really need to find, that balance and accept that you can only make it as good as you can, and do your best just to hear your team out and listen. That is like, hear your people. That's all they want. They want to feel heard. That's really important too. So thank you so much, Tim, for organizing this.
Thank you both. Thank you both for sharing your passion, your thought leadership, your incredible energy and experiences. And I know there's so much that we've all taken away from this. So thank you so much. Thank you to those who have joined us today, or who are watching the recording. Our next session is coming up on June the 4th on team-enabled transformation and leveraging AI-enabled change. Leanne, thank you for putting that in the chat, and hope everyone has a great day. Thanks again so much, and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.